Today on the Save the Gen Z, I interview Conservative Party leadership candidate Erin O'Toole.
Part of team building, part of inspiring a team means you have to march a few miles in their boots, so to speak. You have to understand what you're asking your team to do so that you can inspire them to meet that goal. So if you don't know how to follow and work as part of a team, you really never have the ability to lead that team effectively. The only politician in the last 5 years that's been talking about these things has been me. I've spoken about free speech in the House of Commons. 3 years ago, I stood up against the removing of statues and names from buildings. I called out cancel culture.
Hi and welcome to the show. Erin O'Toole is currently the Member of Parliament for Durham, a seat in the GTA which he was able to win 3 times. When he was elected in the by-election, he quickly worked his way up to become a cabinet minister in the Harper Government. He ran in 2017 and finished third place, and now he is running again, hoping that this time he will be able to become leader and hopefully Prime Minister of Canada. Erin O'Toole is running as a true blue Conservative, but some critics have questioned if he really is true blue. So today, I sit down with him and we will find out if Erin O'Toole is in fact a true blue Conservative. Before we get started with our interview, please subscribe if you haven't already and consider hitting that notification bell. Mr. O'Toole, thank you so much for joining me today for an interview.
Happy to be with you, Ali.
So how about we start off with you telling us a bit about who you are and why you are running for the leadership of the Conservative Party of Canada.
Well, I'm a number of things. I like to say in my Twitter bio, I'm a husband, father, member of parliament, lawyer, volunteer, veteran. I'm 47, and I like to think I brought a lot of life skills to parliament. I served 12 years in the military. I then became a lawyer. I worked 10 years in the private sector for some large law firms, also 5 years for Procter & Gamble, both on Canadian and even global issues. I'm a roll up the sleeves volunteer too. I helped start the largest charity for military families and veterans called the True Patriot Love Foundation. And when my MP resigned in 2012, I stepped forward and ran in a by-election. And I've won 3 elections now in the Toronto suburbs, the 905. And I worked my way up the ranks of the Harper government from the backbench to parliamentary secretary to the cabinet table. All scandal and error free. I build great teams. I set out goals and a vision, and we work towards them. I'm a true blue Conservative. I'm quite on the sort of right of the party, except when it comes to human rights. I always stand up for rights for women, the LGBT community, but also free speech rights and conscience rights. I don't pick or choose which rights I think are important. I defend them all as a liberty-based conservative. I think that's my grounding. And I'm running in this race as the only leader that's ready to win the next election, who's in the House of Commons now, who has a track record of winning. Je parle français aussi. J'ai appris mon français dans les forces armées canadiennes. C'est important. Et si vous voulez, on va parler en français, si vous voulez, pour l'interview. Mais je parle comme un anglo-soldat parce que je suis un ancien combattant. Mais ça fonctionne pour moi. And it's important we have a leader that's ready for the debates, the issues, the policies. I don't think we will win if we try and pretend Justin Trudeau in the middle. I think that's kind of what Peter MacKay wanted to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
PC party. I think we have to defend our principles as Conservatives and grow our movement to win. And that's what I want to do starting in September.
Very good. So before getting involved with law and politics, you served in the Royal Canadian Air Force. How has your experience serving in our military better prepared you to be leader of the CPC and potentially Prime Minister of Canada?
Well, there's a few things. It's a great question. There's a few things I learned. First, when you're trained to be a leader, an officer, both at military college and in your military training, you learn to follow first. Part of team building, part of inspiring a team means you have to march a few miles in their boots, so to speak. You have to understand what you're asking your team to do so that you can inspire them to meet that goal. So if you don't know how to follow and work as part of a team, you really never have the ability to lead that team effectively. So I learned how to follow, work as part of a team, respect my colleagues, and accomplish missions together. That's the first thing. I also had the incredible privilege of living, training, and serving in all parts of the country. I lived for periods of time in Western Canada, at Halifax, where I met my wife when I was sailing with our Atlantic Navy with my Sea King helicopter crew. I also got to see Canada's reputation around the world by sailing with our Navy over to Europe and working with other nations. So that military time not only taught me how to lead, it grew my love for the country, and it allowed me to understand perspectives from other parts of the country as well. And I think that's unique. And in my case, I was also born in Quebec, but grew up in Ontario.
Just like me.
Yeah, these perspectives help form who you are as a person. And I think that helps me lead because it helps me connect.
Absolutely. So COVID-19 has not been easy on our economy, and thanks to Justin Trudeau's reckless spending, we now have a $343 billion deficit, $1.2 trillion of national debt. Canada also now has the highest unemployment rate in the G7 and has lost its Fitch AAA rating. What is your plan to relaunch the economy and reduce the deficit? And would you lay off hardworking public servants in order to balance the books?
Well, there's a lot there, and a lot of it's depressing, isn't it? When I launched my campaign in January, we thought we were dealing with a $25 billion roughly.
Which we thought already was a lot, right? We were like, wow, yeah, that's so much already.
we thought it was the structural deficit of about 25 billion that he created. That was going to be a challenge. Now, as you said, 343 billion spent in 5 months. A third of $1 trillion spent in 5 months with no oversight, no debate, no scrutiny. They've been bleeding the Auditor General's office dry. And so how many other we scandals are there in that massive overspending? How many Liberal Party friends were helped and ingratiated? I'll be asking these questions in September, but you really asked about the plan. My plan has 2 steps. We have to have a plan to tackle the reckless fiscal situation the government's put us in, and to lower expenditures to balance the budget, get back to balance. It will likely take an 8 to 10 year period because Stephen Harper and Jim Flaherty took 5 years to balance a deficit that was roughly $60 billion. We are facing something 4-5 times that, and we'll have to see what really comes in. Then we only have a snapshot. We will have to have that reduced in a manner that's fair and balanced, but disciplined. And that will mean reviewing government expenditures. It will be reviewing how government functions. I don't see the need to lay off public sector workers or members of the bureaucracy, but we should have a question on, as people retire, do we replace on a 1-per-1 level based on systems? These people retiring have 30 plus years. Are we going to do things the same way they were done in the 1980s, when we have a digital economy, we have government services largely online, we had Service Canada offices largely closed during COVID, but the CERB paid out in record time. So I do think it's a time to modernize government in a way that's fair. But the second part of my plan is even more important. We need a private sector renaissance in Canada, because as people come off all the assistance programs, we need employment. We need people to work. And we can't have the ideological approach where Justin Trudeau told Ontario to move past manufacturing. They're trying to lock in our oil sands, and their ideological anti-energy agenda. We have no
Hmm.
softwood lumber agreement. We've had bad trade deals. So I'm going to be a champion for everybody that wants to work and build this country, including a number of blue collar workers who've been let down by the NDP and by the Liberals. If you want to work, provide for your family, and build this country, your home is in the Conservative Party. And I think it's a message that's going to resonate. So reduce expenditures, fire up GDP growth and the private sector economy at the same time.
That sounds like a great plan. So you have said that you are against the carbon tax and plan to scrap it. However, some of your opponents have raised the fact that page 21 of your platform says that you would implement, quote, a national industrial regulatory and pricing regime, unquote. Your campaign chair also previously chaired Patrick Brown's campaign, which had a carbon tax. So can you explain to us what a national industrial regulatory and pricing regime is and why it is not the same thing as a carbon tax?
Sure, and I'm happy to talk about that. Patrick Brown's a friend of mine, but I supported Christine Elliott in that race. Patrick Brown is running Peter MacKay's campaign. So if there's any concern about where a carbon tax might pop up, it's actually Mr. MacKay. It's been sad to see them lying about our campaign. I will kill the carbon tax, get pipelines built, and I will defeat Trudeau because I will talk about having serious environmental plans. So page 21. In Canada, we have the provinces all coordinating plans to reduce emissions. We had a Liberal Gordon Campbell, right of center government in BC over a decade ago create a provincial carbon tax. We have Quebec with cap and trade type system. We have Jason Kenney, Scott Moe, Doug Ford, all working on large emitter strategies, trying to get the large emitters down. What we need to do is the federal government to cooperate on their programs and recognize that who cares how they do it? If they're reducing emissions, that is positive. And can the federal government recognize that? Can we lower taxes for large emitters that meet their goals over a period of time? So what we have to do is the federal government is not the boss, but sometimes the federal government can act like a partner to the provinces and respect their programs. In fact, a court in Alberta said Justin Trudeau's carbon tax was unconstitutional because there's joint jurisdiction over the economy between the federal government and the provincial government. In fact, we're all looking at how the provinces are all reopening after COVID differently. It's because they run their economy. So Justin Trudeau, Peter MacKay seem to think Ottawa will direct what the provinces will do. No, I respect provincial jurisdiction, but we have to have some way of recognizing the positive of what each of these provinces are doing. So that's what it will be. Coordinate so that we respect what each province is doing. And if there's ways the federal government, with investments in technology, with depreciation of capital investments, reduction of corporate tax rates for large emitters who make their reduction targets, if all of this helps keep productivity high and reduce emissions, that is smart policy. And it's killing the carbon tax off the top. So, Peter MacKay, nice guy, friend, he was never known as being strong on policy or strong on principle. I am. If we don't have a serious environmental policy in the next election, we will lose. And our country cannot afford 4 more years of Justin Trudeau.
So I'm going to ask you now a question about the free speech, which is the crucial issue for Conservatives. A poll done during the BC Conservative debate showed 60% of respondents saying that freedom of expression was the most important issue to them. In your 50-page platform, I have not found any free speech policies. So could you tell us if you plan on adding free speech policies, such as revoking funding from universities that don't support free speech, getting rid of some parts of bills C-16, C-8, or outlawing social media censorship?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked this question because just actually in the last week, we did launch some specific platform items on free speech. In fact, we are going to ask that any university that wants to receive federal funding, they will have to sign on to the University of Chicago principles with respect to safeguarding of free speech. I do think it's an important principle. And
Mhm.
that's a policy we're going to enforce. That way, I never interfere with the provinces. The provinces run the universities. In fact, the only federal university in the country is the one I graduated from, Royal Military College. All the others are funded provincially. But our federal funding will be tied to the statement of free speech principles from the University of Chicago. So it's established. Many universities in the US are doing it. I think it's important to stop this sort of campus environment that's been rather toxic. The
Yeah.
other thing we're going to do is require the press gallery to publish objective criteria about membership to ensure that conservative voices, online voices have access to parliamentary news feeds and the various benefits of being part of a press gallery. We're also going to recognize the independent press gallery, which has recently been created, because even that organization, you look on their forms, they still don't even recognize really online blogs and what you're doing. The press gallery itself is a bit stuck in the past, and we should be
Mhm.
able to say we need new objective criteria that include any type of journalists who are, you know, they can't be partisan, but they can certainly have a perspective on the right, because a ton of them have it on the left, right? So
Mhm.
those are
Exactly.
those are my policies. I will say one other thing, Ellie. The only politician in the last 5 years that's been talking about these things has been me. I've spoken about free speech in the House of Commons. 3 years ago, I stood up against the removing of statues and names from buildings. I called out cancel culture. When I launched my campaign in January, in my video outlining why I was running, I said we need a voice to take on cancel culture and stop
Yeah.
the erosion. And at the time, the media mocked me for that. And last week, Malcolm Gladwell and J.K. Rowling were part of signatures from around the world calling out cancel culture as well. So
Mhm.
for people that have this as an important issue, I'm the only one that has been doing this for many years. In fact, when I took on a teachers union in Ontario 3 years ago, who wanted to remove Sir Johnny Macdonald's name from a few schools in Ontario, um, I was the only voice. I went on to campus. I did a debate in an Indigenous Studies class at Carleton in defense of Sir Johnny Macdonald statues. My staff didn't think I would survive.
I'm surprised you survived. I'm surprised you got out of there alive.
In fact, I believe I won the debate because I went there with a respectful approach, but with knowledge. I was armed with knowledge. And I
Mhm.
find often voices on the left just use outrage. They actually don't
Yeah.
use knowledge, and they try and cancel your opinion. So I've got a track record of winning debates, standing up for our principles in interviews. I'm not the type of leader that walks out of an interview when they're asking tough questions.
Well, that's good. That's good to hear. A little follow-up. So Derek Sloan said that he would put in a law that would ban social media, big tech companies from censoring information that does not go against the laws of Canada. Is that something that you would be open to do?
I think we have to look and work with social media and digital enterprises on protecting of free speech. I'm not sure exactly, you know, Derek's raised the issue. I don't think what he's actually saying is doable. Many of these companies are obviously not located in Canada, or they only have a subsidiary type presence here. But I do think raising this issue, European countries are approaching it in a certain way. I think we have to leverage the best approach. I was proud the Conservative caucus helped lead tri-party or tri-country examinations of social media companies led by our own Conservative politicians. So we will stand up for free speech across the board. And, you know, I think I will make sure everything we commit to is deliverable.
All right. So you have said that you're against cancel culture. However, your campaign had Jim Carahalios's leadership candidacy revoked over some comments that he had made. So if you're against cancel culture, then why did you and your campaign cancel Jim Carahalios?
We didn't. Now, we filed a complaint, and there was an adjudicative body that made a determination that Jim Carahalios was lying to people and was actually supporting intolerance. In fact, it wasn't just myself that complained. There were some outside groups that objected to images he had of himself standing in front of mobs of people of color, somehow in trying to incite intolerance. That's inappropriate.
Mm.
And I think the party acknowledged that. Here's the reality. I don't mind a good debate. In fact, Mr. Carrey has never done anything in his life other than complain about things. I take charge, whether as a volunteer, whether as someone who started something to help military families. So when he sends a letter around and on the envelope it says, "Stop Sharia law, stop Erin O'Toole," that is misleading under the Competition Act of Canada. He's lying about me. I know people that died fighting the Taliban from my military time.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't just lie and cheat and steal your way into public office. I don't get to cancel him, but we do have a rules-based approach to disputes in this contest. Other candidates have brought complaints about my campaign to this adjudicative body. They decide. So Mr. Carrey Halios challenged their finding, and he was unsuccessful ultimately. He's got to decide to do that. I was against the carbon tax before Jim Carrey Halios ever launched his Facebook page against the carbon tax. He was also saying that I hadn't been fighting the carbon tax. I'm on the public record before that. My concern is it seems that whether it's his fights with the Ontario PC party, now his fights with our party, he collects lists and emails, and I haven't seen a full accounting of where the donations he gets go to. And I think that's something he should answer. So rather than throw lies and division around, run for Parliament. Put your positions out there. Be willing to stand by it, so that if someone calls you on it, you have to be able to show that you're not lying your way into public office. If you can tell, it kind of bothers me. It's hard to chase lies on the internet. When Winston Churchill said 75 plus years ago, a lie gets around the world before truth gets its pants on. That was before the internet. That was in newspapers and stuff.
Wow.
So I think I want a good debate. I think there's been a good debate. The four candidates in here, we respect each other. We haven't always agreed, but I think no one is lying or defaming people, these sorts of things. And in fact, when Derek was being attacked for some of his comments in the COVID and some of Dr. Tam's decisions, I defended Derek because I took his word for what he said. And I thought the government's flip-flops on the border, on masks, and a lot of things did show a profound lack of professionalism.
Absolutely. So I'm going to just challenge something that you said and ask you a question. So you said that Jim Carrey Halios has not done anything but complaining. However, Jim Carrey Halios has been a strong fighter against elitist corruption in political parties, and he tried to get involved. He tried running for the leadership of the presidency of the PC party, and was cheated out of that election. Now he tried to be leader of the party, and of course, this situation happened. You said he should run for Parliament. If Jim Carrey Halios submitted a nomination paper to run under an O'Toole Conservative Party, would you allow him to run as an MP for the Conservatives in the next election?
It would be up to two things. First, it would be up to the EDA. And second, it would be up to the rules-based process. So when I first ran, we have a 75-page, roughly, application program where you have to say, have you been convicted of any crime? Are there any outstanding legal matters against you? Have you, been accused of workplace harassment? All these stuff. We have a candidate screening form that goes through everyone. And that's not run by the leader, that's run by the party. I went through it in my by-election. You also have to include an RCMP background check to show that you don't have any outstanding fines or, so if he passed those processes, that would be fine.
All right, well, that's good to hear. So let's end our interview with a more easier question. Why should people vote for you? Or if they're not planning on putting you number one, why should they rank you before Peter MacKay?
Well, if they want to win the next election, I firmly believe I'm the only candidate that can win. And I'm the only candidate that can win and is true blue and is not afraid of standing up for conservative values. I have not been trying to shift the party into the middle. I've been trying to defend the turf we established under the Harper government, and I've proposed some ideas for the future so that we can win. I'm in the House of Commons now. I've won 3 times in the region. We have to win more seats, the 905 around Toronto. And I've got cabinet experience and more outside experience than anyone else. I speak the best French. I'm ready to win. If we don't have a leader in the House in September, after the pandemic has interrupted and the Liberals have blocked Parliament from properly sitting for over 5 months, we've got a $343 billion deficit, as you said. We've got a declining world reputation. We're becoming poorer. If we allow 6 months or however much time there is before an election to have an empty seat and no leader, we will not win. And I'm worried.
No, we won't.
If Trudeau wins another term, we won't recognize the country in another 5 years. So
No.
I can win now, but I need people's first vote to do that.
You made a good point there. I mean, I look at what's going on in Europe, and it does not almost not seem like a Western free societies anymore. There's so much that is so destructive. So I'd like to thank you, Mr. O'Toole, for taking this time today to sit down with me. And I wish you the best of luck with your campaign. And I hope that if you are to win, that you will come back for another interview.
Yeah, no, well, kudos to you for doing this. Thank you for the opportunity, Ali. And it's good discussion. And I don't mind when people ask the difficult questions. This has been a good leadership contest. There's been a good contrast. There's been some good ideas. I think we all have to play within the rules and make sure we're growing the movement, not scaring people away. But I think at the end of this, we will come together, we will unite, and we will win. And I've certainly, Derek knows I've stood up for him. I would like to see Leslyn Lewis in the House. And if Peter MacKay,
so would I.
Yeah, if Peter MacKay wants
She's
to. Yeah, we need to put the best team on the ice.
For sure.
And I think that and our grassroots across the country, if we listen and empower them, we will win. And I look forward to being the leader as we take back Canada.
I hope that you enjoyed our interview. If you did, give a thumbs up to this video and subscribe if you haven't already. To learn more about Erin O'Toole and his platform, check the link in the description. Thank you, and God bless you.